the Real Estate Service Act. Now, this is a wonderful chapter. You're actually going to like this chapter. The reason for that, because there's a lot of good information in this chapter that is usable in real life. There's going to be a lot of questions in the exam that are pretty straightforward and pretty simple ones. So that's why you're going to love this chapter. So what is the Real Estate Service Act? When they talk about the act, they talk about legislation. And the Real Estate Service Act says if somebody is planning to charge people money for the services to buy or sell houses, then those people must be licensed. They have to be licensed or exempt, right? So person must not provide the real estate services to or on behalf of another for an expectation of remuneration unless the person is licensed or exempt. And that's exactly what you guys are doing, right? You're trying to pass the exam, which you will, right? And then you're going to apply for your license. So when you get your license and when you want to apply for your license, where do you start? Now, after you pass the exam, you have up to 1 year to activate your license. I don't know if you guys know that. So if you don't activate it within the year, then you'll have to come back and redo the exam and start everything from scratch. So don't miss that 1 year gap. So after you pass the exam, you have to activate your license. And the way you're going to activate your license, you have to choose your brokerage. So brokerage is the physical location. It is your office that you're going to be working at. Yes, you will be independent. Yes, you will be working for yourself. And you will set up your own schedule so nobody's going to boss you around. But basically, you want to make sure that you have an umbrella on top of you. And that umbrella will protect you from the rain, from the wind, from all the problems that can come up in this profession. And that's what the brokerage is for. So when they refer to the brokerage, that is a physical location. So it's an office on a physical location, whatever you choose. So for example, if somebody says, oh, I work out of RE/MAX, and then you said, oh, I also work out of RE/MAX, it doesn't mean that you guys are from the same brokerage, right? You could be from different locations. And every single brokerage, just because it's a RE/MAX, it doesn't mean that they all have the same fees, they all have the same training, so they all have the same managing broker. They're all going to have completely different structures. And that's why it's your job after you pass the exam to investigate all of them, to choose what suits the best for you, right? What type of fees you want to pay, what type of trainings you want to receive from those brokerages. So you will choose a brokerage. But the best thing about the brokerage is that it will protect you from pretty much everything that comes your way. Okay, so that's what it's for. Now, my question is, can you choose 2 brokerages at the same time? It says, I want to be in a relationship with you and with you. If it's a serious relationship, you cannot do both, right? So for the exam, just know that it's not possible to be in 2 different relationships at the same time. So you kind of have to pick one at a time, and if that relationship doesn't work, then you move on to the next one. So the same thing with the brokerage. On the exam, if they ask you, oh, you want to work for both brokerage at the same time, that is a false statement. One at a time. Okay, so let's say you picked one. You picked one, you liked one, and it says, okay. So you came to the office, to that physical location, and then you met up with the managing broker. Okay, so my question is first, right? Your brokerage, managing broker, associate broker, represent, for the exam purposes, they call them all licensees. Okay, so when they say licensee who provides the services, they're referring to the brokerage. And then if they say a licensee who is responsible for the brokerage, then they're referring to the managing broker. I know it's just the language, and you'll get used to this language, but just know that if they say who provides the services, brokerage itself, right? And a managing broker, think of it as the manager of the office who will be responsible for you. So you come to the office, you meet up with the managing broker. Now, in real life, it is crucial to meet up with the managing broker. Not with recruiters, because a lot of offices hire people just to recruit people. Your job is to meet up with that person to see if you like that person, because that is the person who will be responsible for you, and somebody who will be responsible for your education. Make sure that you understand how to fill up the forms, how not to make mistakes, how not to get in trouble. Okay, you need that person. You want to connect with that person. You want to make sure that you guys have a good relationship. So an exam managing broker, they'll ask you, is that a must for the brokerage to have a managing broker? It is a must. They have to have one. If they don't have one, then the whole brokerage cannot work. Okay, so he's responsible things. He has control and conduct and supervising of all of the agents. So that's what his job is. Sometimes they'll have an associate brokerage. It doesn't happen too often, right? But all of the offices will have the managing broker. Okay, so managing broker is the licensee responsible for managing the brokerage, right? The office, exercising the rights conferred by the brokerage, controlling conduct of the brokerage real estate business, and the supervision of the real estate related licensees. Right? So that's kind of his job. So can he employ people? Yes or no? Is that his job to employ people? Yes, it is. That's kind of his job. He needs to get new people in this brokerage, right? So that's his job. They also have to maintain the brokerage books, accounts, and the records. Now, for the exam, if they ask you for how long they have to keep all the records, they have to keep the hard copies for 7 years, and plus the electronic copies for 7 years. And also you guys, you will be responsible for your client's information and have the copies also for yourself in the hard copies and electronic copies for 7 years. Crazy, right? Responsible for the agent's actions. So that's, as I said, if you make any mistakes, they are responsible for you. Okay? And must have a managing broker whose license will determine the services that the brokerage is permitted to provide. So let me explain you this one. Let's say you got your license to become a real estate agent, right? Trading services license. So that means you can buy and you can sell. If your managing broker has that type of license, then he can hire you. But what if, and that's what a lot of our students do, they start with one license, then they get a supplemental license after that. So let's say you get your real estate license and now you want to get your rental property management license. Can you do this? Yes, you can. But now you come to that office and you talk to the managing broker and says, so can I work for you? Right? What type of license do you have as a managing broker? And he says, oh, I have only real estate license. So if he only has a real estate license, can he hire you, or can you work with two of your licenses there? No. So the managing broker has to have both of those licenses in order for you to provide those services. Do you see how it works? So basically, managing broker is the one who needs to have licenses. If he has a strata, if he has a rental property management, if he has a real estate, then he can hire all of those professions. Right? So it all depends on him. And as a brokerage, they have it's called the vicarious liability. So that means they are liable for all of your actions. So look here for 1 second. Look where you are. You right at the bottom of that pyramid. Do you see this? And they call you a representative. Do you know why they call you representative? Because who do you represent? You represent the brokerage. So if anybody comes after you and they want to sue you because you made a mistake, who else would they come after? They'll come after your brokerage. And that managing broker will be responsible for your action, and he will go to court with you to deal with the issue. Do you see what I mean by the umbrella? So that brokerage is actually a good thing to have, because somebody is responsible for you and somebody who will basically take the bullets for you also, right? So you're not by yourself on the line in here. So yes, they will be vicariously liable for all of the actions that you did, right? So even if it's a fraud, they still will be responsible. Okay, so you are the representatives, right? They call you for a reason, that because you represent your brokerage. So qualification for the licensing. Can you be an infant and be a real estate agent? What is an infant? Is that a little baby? Okay, in British Columbia, an infant is not a tiny baby. An infant is anybody who is under the legal age. Now, legal age here is 19 years old in British Columbia. So that means if you are 18, are you an infant? Yes, you are, right? So if you are under 19, then you consider to be as an infant. Now, we do have students who are 18 years old and who take in our classes now, and that's okay, because they can go for the exam, they can pass the exam when they're still 18, but they will have to wait until they turn 19 to apply for that license. So they ask you, so what's the qualification for you to be licensed, right? Have to be at least 19 years old, so that means no infancy. Be a good reputation, so for them, that's criminal records or bankruptcy. So if you had some criminal records or bankruptcy, you still can apply for your license, but they might put some restrictions on your license. That's the only thing. Right? Meet educational requirements. That's exactly what you're doing right now. You're going to pass the exam, right? Then you're going to take some extra courses. So a lot of things. On the exam, they love this question. They usually ask you a question about the managing broker. And so look, what if you want to manage the office, right? Do you want to manage the office? What do you do then? Same as qualification as a licensee, right? So be over 19, good reputation, meet the requirements, but there's one more thing they added in here, and that's the one that will test you, okay? They will say, is that 2, is that 3, is it 4? How many years is that? For you to have a license experience before you can apply for a managing broker profession. It's always the 2 years of license experience. And it says it has to be during the 5 years before the date of the application. This is kind of a new thing they added in here. Basically, they're trying to tell you that if you quit on your license, let's say you've been licensed for years and now you quit on your license and now you just renew your license just right now, and then now you want to apply for a managing broker, you can't do this because you have to have at least 2 years of continuous experience, right, within the 5 years before you can apply for that license. So just remember 2 years, honestly, that's all you have to know. Now, do you have to have some type of recommendation to become a managing broker? Do you need to have good financial statements before you can apply? Or do you have to be a Canadian citizen before you apply? Now, they'll add a lot of things in there for you, and you would think, I guess you should, but no, it doesn't matter. As long as you have work visa, then you can apply for anything, right? So work permit. So just know what's in here. If they talk about something else, it definitely becomes a false statement. Question 1, true or false statements. To qualify for the managing broker license in BC, you have to provide the real estate service within the Canadian province or the Yukon for 2 out of the 5 years preceding the application. Did that Yukon thing confuse you? Don't let it. So as long as they say 2 out of the 5 years, then that's a good statement. That becomes a true statement, right? So that's all I want you to know. So as long as you have the good reputation and you qualify, and you're over 19 years old, you qualify. I forget to say something. Some people mention this in classes. My people always tell me, but it says 19, and if I do math, it should be at least 21. We know that, you know that, but exam is a computerized thing. So it's a computer who pulls up things out of it and says, okay, which one is a true, which one is a false statement. So that at least 19 is also a true statement. Just keep it as is. We can't change that. It's just how it is on the exam. Okay, so the length of the license. So you apply for your license. They give you the license. How long is this license good for? Is that 2, 3, 5, 1 years, months? What is this? So your license is good for 2 years. And what happens after 2 years? Do you have to go back for the exam again? Oh my gosh, no. Say no to that. But you will have to reapply, right? And pay another fee for your license. So every 2 years, you will have to apply for your, basically pay fee to renew your license. That's what you have to do. Can work for only one brokerage at a time. We already talked about that. You can have 2 serious relationship. It has to be just one at a time. Can only do services permitted by the brokerage. So if your managing broker has only real estate license, that's the only services that brokerage can provide. Can only accept remuneration from your brokerage. Now that is crucial. So in real estate, a lot of clients like to appreciate you and say thank you to you. And sometimes they give you gifts. Sometimes they give you a nice Prada bags and other things. And you say, oh, thank you. So what do I do with this? Now, you're supposed to, whatever comes your way, you're supposed to give it to your brokerage, to disclose to the brokerage, and let the brokerage give it back to you. So that's how it works. Because all the money that you will receive from the transaction have to come from your brokerage, from your office. So if you come to one of those brand new developments and developer says, I'll just pay you directly, I'll give you, just bring me the buyer and I'll pay you. What do you say to that? If you try to take the money from the developer and if anybody finds out, you guys gonna lose your license. So don't ever do that, because what you have to tell the developer says, look, I'll bring you the buyer, you will pay my brokerage, and my brokerage will pay me. So all the money, all the gifts, all the bonuses have to go through the brokerage. So it's a disclosure thing. On the exam, they're always going to test you in the disclosure, and it's your job to tell them that, yes, disclose, disclose, disclose everything. That's the rule. All contracts with clients will be in the name of your brokerage. So you need to understand this. Because you are the representative, you're right at the bottom of that pyramid. You represent your brokerage. So when you're working with a buyer, that buyer does not belong to you. That buyer belongs to your brokerage. Did you know that? And the brokerage is the one that has the buyer, and he pays you commission from the transaction that happened. What if it's, you say, I'm taking the listing, you know, it's not your listing, it belongs to your brokerage. So none of the clients belong to you. So think of yourself as a matchmaker. You match them up. Hey, you match the clients with your brokerage, and for that reason, you get paid when the transaction is closed. What if something happens to you? Let's say you get hit by a car and you died, sorry, and you have 10 listings and your wife works out of the same brokerage. Do you think she will get all those 10 listings? You see, they don't belong to you. They don't belong to her. They will belong to the brokerage itself. So those listings will stay with the brokerage, and they will designate any other agent that they feel like it's a good fit for that. So that's kind of the point. The point is that nothing belongs to you, right? No clients belong to you. They all belong to the brokerage. Brokerage has lost its license. Is that a problem for you? So what if the brokerage lost its license? So there's no more license for they forget to renew their license. Would that affect you? Yes, it would. It would affect everybody, because if there's no active brokerage, if it's inactive, then guess what you do? You'd better run and find a new brokerage as soon as possible. Now, how do you switch to offices, by the way? What if you don't like one? You sign up with them and it says, that's not a good relationship. I'm not happy here. Right? Can you just drop it and move on to the next one? As long as you, the thing is, if you just drop one and says, I quit, I leave this relationship, and if you don't sign up with the other one, then what happens to your license in between? That license will be put on hold, and that's not good. So that's why in real life, you find the new brokerage first. You find that new relationship. And as soon as you're happy, then you switch and you move your license. So this way your license is not going to be deactivated. But in this case, you'd better run. You'd better find one because you need one. What if it's the managing broker who lost the license? For some reason, something happened, he lost his license. Would that affect you? An exam, I'd like to ask for this. No, it's not, because what will happen, they will just replace that managing broker with a new managing broker, and that's it, right? So one goes, the other one comes. It's not going to affect you. Now, what if it's you who lost the license? Can you still ask for your commissions? Can you still buy and sell? Don't lose your license. Keep it, right? Because if you lose it, then you won't be able to do anything, right? So you cannot ask for the commissions. You cannot, there's nothing, right? You're done. Okay, let's look at the question number 2. Now, I haven't explained you that information, but I just want to test you on this to see how much you understood. Okay, so a real estate agent must possess a license in BC. This requirement set out by who? So basically they're saying, who told you that you have to be licensed? Is that the common law, which is the oldest law, something you learned in chapter 1, that told that in Canada, if you want to sell houses, you'd better be licensed? Is that what they said many, many years ago? Is that a federal legislation? So is that a federal government and says for the whole Canada, you guys, if you want to get licensed or if you want to sell houses, you have to be licensed? Is that what that is? Or is that provincial statute? I hope you said it's a provincial statute, okay? Because if you go to every single province, they have a different regulations and they have different qualifications for people to get licensed. Different exams, different everything. If you want to get licensed in Ontario, you have to take 5 exams. And that's why a lot of Ontario people come in here to take a license, right? But it's a provincial statute. So each province decides what rules and regulations and what kind of exams you're going to be taking, right, in order for you to have that license. Okay, so real estate services. For the exam, they might ask you, what are the real estate services? Now, what's this? What is a real estate service? So buying and selling, is that a real estate service? Yes, it is. How about renting? Is that a real estate service? Yes, it is. How about giving mortgages? That's not a real estate service. So for the exams, trading services, when they refer to trading services, That's my real estate agents. This is people who buy and sell houses. This is what your license is good for. Now, does it matter if it's commercial or residential? Does it matter if it's a strata? Does it matter if it's agricultural land? In British Columbia, it doesn't really matter. Okay? As long as you get a trading service license, then you can sell and you can buy any real estate, which is good. Next one, rental property management service. That's also a real estate service. Now, this is the service provided by the rental property management people, right? So they have to have a separate license to be able to rent stuff, right? What they do, collect the rents, negotiate, making payments, collecting strata fees, right? So that's what they do. And then we have a strata management services, and that's my strata people. That's the people who manage the strata, right? But out of those three real estate services, you don't see mortgage people. You don't see, what else is in there? You don't see the notaries. You don't see all the other things in here. So just know that real estate service, only three things: trading, rental, and the strata. That's it. Now, we do have an exemptions. We have an exemptions to the real estate license. Now, what are those exemptions? So basically, they say who is not providing the real estate services, who will be exempt from those real estate services, right? Basically, who no need to have the real estate license. So if it's for sale by owner, if he wants to sell his own house, he doesn't have to have a license for that, right? He will advertise it as a for sale by owner. We call it FISBO, right? And that's it. He's not gonna provide clients with any services or anything like this. If it's a collection agent working for the government, do you think they have to have a real estate license? No, anybody who works for the government, they don't need to have a real estate license. Notaries, accountants, appraisers, and person acting on behalf of developers. Now, this is the one that you really have to know. That is an exemption. Have you ever been to those new developments? Have you walked in one of those showrooms? And those pretty girls that work in there, they always say, oh, come, we'll show you how it's going to look like. This is the pictures. This is the models. Which one do you think you want to buy, right? So people who work directly for the developers, selling developers units only. Now, those people don't have to have a license. Why? Because they're working for one developer and they're selling his units only. They're not selling you anything else. So if you talk to them and says, you know what, I like it, but I do want to buy something else, can they help you out with that something else? Of course not, right? And those people get the salaries and percentages from the developer itself, right? So they will become an exemption because they're selling their own units, right? It's like for sale by owner kind of thing. Okay, question number 3. Which of the following are the 3 categories of the real estate services as defined in the Real Estate Service Act? So if I say real estate services, look how many services here. Which one is our services? Do we have trading anywhere? Yes, we do. That's one of them. Do we have the rental services? Yes, we do. And what's the last one? Is the strata one. Good. Everything else, they can call it whatever they want, but that's not what the real estate services are. Okay. Question 4. Which of the following is not a real estate service under the Real Estate Service Act? So what do you think? Constructing a commercial office, collecting the rents from the tenants, selling a co-owner property, right? Assisting in the sale of the condominium. So anything to do with buying and selling, that's your trading services. Anything collecting rents, that's your rental property management services, right? But the construction, do any of us do construction? It's not a real estate service. You can be a builder and have a real estate license. That makes sense. But as a real estate service, construction is not on that list. Okay, none of us do construction. Okay, trading, rental, and the strata ones, right? And your exemptions are everything else. Question 5, true or false? A licensee is exempt from licensing when he rents his family property and does not use any information relating to his brokerage. So that means he does not advertise through his brokerage. He does not put his brokerage logo name on his advertisement. So he's doing it for sale by owner or the rent by owner, right? So he's doing it by himself. Okay. Is he exempt? Is that a true statement? Yes, it is. So you guys allowed to sell or to rent your own properties as long as you do not use your brokerage information in this. Even if you have a license, I mean, why would you do that? But for the exam, they say if you're planning to do it by yourself, you still can do this, but you're not allowed to use your brokerage name in any way or any advertisement, and basically just do it for sale by own kind of things. Disclose in writing to their managing broker that they will provide rental management services on their own behalf in relation to their own real estate. So you also have to tell your brokerage says, hey, I'm doing it on my own. I don't need your help. I'm not going to use your name. And you put it in writing and you give it to your brokerage. Okay, question 6. Under the regulations of the Real Estate Service Act, certain categories of persons are exempt from the licensing requirements contained in the Act. Which of the following is not considered covered by an exemption? Okay, so this is the question itself that people get confused on. You read it and says, what did they just say in here? Did I miss something in here? There's double negative in there. Not covered by an exemption, right? So it's confusing. Just know how to read those questions, and if you just look through the answers, you kind of can figure out what they want. So they're asking you who is not exempt, who needs to have a license, right? That's what it is. Who, out of all of those 4 people in here, who needs to have a license in order for them, to do what they do? Look at option 1, a business executive selling a neighbor's house for a flat fee. Okay, he's selling the house for a fee. So if you're selling it for a fee, should you have a license then? Is he selling the house? Yes, he is. There's an interest in the land. So if he wants to charge somebody, does he have to have a license? Or is he fully exempt from that? Of course he needs to have a license. So option 1 should be the answer in here. But look at option 2. An individual providing the property inspection. So just because they do inspection, do they need to have a real estate license, or are they fully exempt from real estate license? Yeah, they are exempt. They have their own license, right? They don't need our license, okay? Right? Option 3, accountants in relation to the purchase of sale of business. Accountants, they have their own license. They don't need to have real estate license. 4, a full-time salary employee of Mega Land Development selling houses in a 3,000 house tract development by Mega Land Company. So look what happens here. So look at option 4 and option number 1. So option 1, he definitely needs to have a license since he charges the fee. But why is option 4 is fully exempt from licensing, from real estate licensing? Why are they fully exempt? What is he doing here? He is a developer who is selling his own development, right? That's why he's also fully exempt from the licensing, right? So that's what's happening here. When you do questions, this is why we always ask you to do all the quizzes, because the more you practice on these questions, the more you can start you'll learn how to read these questions better. Honestly, it comes with practice. It's not like we all learn how to read them from the first time we start reading those questions. It just comes with repetition, right? So the more you do them, the more you will know what they want from you. So now let's talk about the real estate corporation. Have you ever seen, now by the way, that's my student from years ago, Randy Man. Randy Man was my student maybe 10, 15 years ago. Good guy. He's doing really good. So anyways, so he has the personal real estate corporation. Now look at his whole side in here. So that is his name, right? That's his brand. Right? And this is a personal real estate corporation. So you must disclose what type of business you have. So if you're part of the team, you have to disclose that you're part of the team. Okay? If you have a corporation, you have to show them that, yes, I am incorporated. He has to also show the company that he's working for. So he works for Stone's House Realty, right? And that's his ads and all the other things. So the point is, he has his own personal real estate corporation, right? We call that PREC. Right? So PREC is the real estate personal corporation stuff. So they say the corporation can be licensed as a managing broker, as an assistant broker, or as a representative. So basically anybody can incorporate themselves. But this type of corporation is not like any other corporation. And we're going to teach you that in the financial statements chapter. So that's coming up soon. Right? And in that chapter, we're going to go more into details. We're going to explain about different type of businesses, but just know in real estate, the corporation is not the same as any other corporation. With this type of corporation, you're still personally liable for everything. So if your client wants to come and sue you, he will come and sue you still, right? And your corporation will not protect you from your clients, right? So that's what's happening here. But the point why people like to do that, because they can I don't want to say make more money, but they can plan a better income or a tax stream, so they can save a lot of taxes by creating a corporation. They can split the income. They can put their families in there, right? And split the dividends. And there's a lot of things you can do in there, right? So you don't have to pay as much tax. So we'll talk about that in a different chapter, but just know that PREC is your real estate corporation, and you must to let people know on all of your ads and everything that you do, right? And it does not protect you guys from anything. You still can get sued and lose your license. Okay, so now let's say you do so well, you have your PREC, you are doing amazing, and then you say, you know what, it's too much work, I want to hire somebody. So you decided to hire the unlicensed assistant, right? So somebody who doesn't have a license, they might get it at some point, but at this point, they don't have it. Can you still hire them? Yes, you can. So the unlicensed assistant. For the exam, they'll ask you what they can do and what they cannot do. So I'll give you a simple rule. Just know that as an unlicensed assistant, they have a zipper, okay? Zip, zip. Don't talk to my clients. So if I hire you and you're unlicensed, I tell you, do not talk to my clients. You can ask them questions, you can collect the information from them, but you cannot ever give your opinion. So you can never tell them about the property. You can give the factual information, 2-bedroom, 3 bathrooms, that much square footage, but that's it. Okay, so that's why I say zip zip. So what they can do, okay, let's say you do an open house. It's your open house. Can they run an open house for you? No, because they can't talk to the clients. But can they open it for you? Can they put a sign in front of that open house? Can they prepare things for you? Put the cookies in there? That's their job. So they assist in you, but they can't really talk to your clients, but they will help you, right? So they can do that, perform office filing and bookkeeping. Of course, they can do that. They don't have to talk. Draft the documents and correspondence to approval and signature by the licensee. So they cannot sign on your behalf. They cannot do anything with the contract, but they can prepare the documents for you. Place and remove the signs. They can witness your signatures, because a lot of contracts will ask for the witness, and that's where your unlicensed assistant, if they see you signing, they can witness your signature, and they can arrange for repairs on the rental properties. You can do a lot of things like that, right? But what they cannot do, they cannot host the open house. That means they cannot talk to the client, give them information or anything like this, and obtain or renew contracts on behalf of licensees. So they can prepare those contracts, but they cannot really work with those contracts in any way. They cannot do anything, okay? Present an offer to purchase a real estate. So they cannot present offers. They cannot negotiate, because all of this involves talking, and they're not allowed to talk, right? So that's kind of a foundational thing. Just remember that if they say something behind your back, then who's going to be responsible? You will be, right? And they'll come after you. Not good. Okay, so unlicensed assistant can. Out of those two, what they can. Can they renew a listing contract? Ooh, that's too much work. That's too much responsibility. So choose the one that doesn't have much, so they can witness your signatures, but that's pretty much it. Good job. Question 7, true, false. An individual may be registered independently as a real estate representative without being employed by the real estate brokerage. True, false? Can you work without the office? Ooh, of course not. You have to be part of something, right? So they have to be responsible. So that is a false statement. How about option 2? A real estate representative is engaged by his or her brokerage to trade in real estate services in the brokerage's name on behalf of the brokerage clients. So what they're trying to say, that you will work on behalf of your brokerage and you will represent the brokerage clients, even though you think it's your clients, but they belong to your brokerage. So that is a true statement, right? False and true. So now let's talk about the Real Estate Service Act. We call it RESA. Now, in my mind, and this is how I teach my students, I think of it as the god of real estate. It's out there, okay? It's in the air. It's a legislation. So that means they cannot physically come to you and give you that slap on the face and to discipline you. They can't do this. But it's an act, right? It's a legislation that says that we want to make sure that all the real estate licensees are reasonably competent. So they have some knowledge, they have some skills. They want to make sure that you have a good reputation. So that's what the act is talking about, right? So he created the rules, like in the Bible, and they say, like, be good, right? Don't kill anyone, don't steal from anyone. So that's pretty much what they set up for. And make sure that somebody can discipline you too. So act itself cannot discipline you. He's out there, right? He's not really, but he said, I want to make sure that there's somebody here on this planet who can educate you and who can, give you that discipline once in a while. So I'll tell you who can discipline you. So who he chose. So first of all, the Real Estate Service Act. For the exam, I want you to know that as RESA, R-E-S-A. So we'll talk about RESA quite often. Just think of it, it's out there. It came up with all this, the rules and regulations for us. And think of it this way. So the RESA, the God, he came up with this, he established for you the organizations. He established the foundation, the errors in emission insurance, the compensation fund, all of those organizations. So my question to you, did he create all of this to protect you or to protect the public? Who do you think he wants to protect here? Unfortunately, it's never about you. It's so sad because nobody is protecting you. So yes, the act is there, but it's not for your protection. It's for the public protection, always towards the public protection, right? So he imposes the requirements on licensees to protect the public. So now he said, I need the boss. I need somebody who can give you that discipline, somebody who can educate you. I want to find somebody who can physically give you that license or take that license away from you. Before, we used to have a council, and the council used to be our boss, right? For years and years and years. And just recently, they changed that. And they switched him with BCFSA, which is the British Columbia Financial Services Authority. So BCFSA is your new boss. But what do I tell you about the council? Because sometimes you go for the exam and our students still coming back and saying, guess what? I still saw the questions with the council in it. So that means they haven't removed those questions yet, but it's the same thing as a BCFSA. So just because they say the council, don't get confused. Just know it's the same thing. They do exact same thing. There's no much difference. It just, they renamed them, right? Different boss, basically, with different name. That's it. So now you have a boss who is BCFSA, okay? Who, I don't want to say created him, but who put him into charge, right? Is the God, right? Is the RESA, is the Real Estate Service Act is the one that put him in charge. And because he put him in charge, look what happens. This is the boss. The BCFSA will be responsible to enforce that act on you. So in the exam, they will ask you who enforces that act on you, right? Make sure that you say it's your boss, which is BCFSA, right? They're responsible for that. Good. So let's talk about your boss. You like that my picture down there? world best boss, right? Okay, so BCFSA, that's your British Columbia Financial Services Authority, right? And for the exam, they might ask you, is that just the boss for only real estate people or only for property management people? Is only for you guys? Please say no, because this boss is responsible for a lot of other institutions, right? Before, my mortgage people were always part of the BCFSA. That used to be their boss, right? We used to have the council, but now we all have the same boss. So he bosses everybody. So he's responsible for us, licensees, unlicensed real estate activity. Now it's interesting. So even if you not licensed, but if you made a mistake, that boss, that BCFSA, he has all the rights to come after those unlicensed people and educate them and fine them too. Okay, real estate development marketing, we'll talk about this. So anybody who builds the new developments, they will be responsible to the BCFSA. Mortgage brokers, credit unions, pension plans, trust companies, look how many things, insurance companies, credit unions. So all of those are responsibility of BCFSA. Crazy, right? So he's a boss to many, many, many organizations. So what is the main objective of this BCFSA? We already talked about it. It's for protection of who? It's for the protection of the public. Good, not you, but the public. Strengthen consumer protection and ensure public can have confidence in the standards of the practice provided by the real estate professionals, right? So that's what they want. They want people to be confident about the real estate agents, right? And then for anybody who does real estate. So make sure that you remember what I told you. They're responsible for also educating and penalizing the unlicensed people too. Okay, so look at that huge list of what your boss is responsible for. Like any other boss, does he have rights to hire people, right? Accept them for the job? And that's exactly what will happen. So after you pass the exam, you choose your office, and after you pick your office, they will give you some application forms to fill out. And in those application forms, this is when you're gonna tell them everything about yourself. You cannot keep any information away from them, so you have to disclose everything. So if they ask you, have you been bankrupt, when, and this, you have to disclose all of it. They need to know, okay? And what do they do with that application? That application will be sent to the BCFSA. So BCFSA is the one who enforces the act, right? Because they were created by they're not created by the God, but they were chosen by the God, right? So they want to make sure that all of you guys met all the educational requirements. He's responsible for the education. So on the exam, treat the education as always as a true statement, because everybody wants to educate you. Simple, right? So if they ask you, BCFSA, are they responsible for the education? Of course they are. It supervises and advances the educational qualification and programs. So that's kind of his job. Make sure that, yes, you go for that exam. Yes, you pass the exam. Yes, after the exam, you have to go for the applied course. And then this and this and this and this, right? So that's kind of comes from where it's coming from BCFSA. License, he can issue that license. He's the one who can renew your license, who can suspend your license, and cancel your license. So basically, that application that you fill out at RV brokerage will go to the BCFSA, and then he will look at it and basically decide if he wants to give you that license or not. Okay, making orders against unlicensed people. So as I said, they can come after those people. Levies the fees on all of the licensees to meet BCFSA's expenses. Now, isn't that interesting? So when you pay for that license, when you apply for the license, you pay the fee for that license. Out of that fee, a portion of the money will go towards the BCFSA. It will go towards their payment, right? Because somebody has to pay for them. Somebody has to give them money. And who gives them money? You give them money with your licensing fee. So a portion of it will go towards the BCFSA. Investigates you before and after you receive the license. Now that's interesting, because you would think they would investigate you before they give you the license. So that's when they look at that application, make sure everything is good, right? They check the records. But sometimes, and it happened to one of my students, unfortunately, he was such a good guy, and he was in his 40s, and like life put his life together, and then somebody called the council at that time, the old boss, and say, hey, this guy used to smuggle drugs when he was like 17 years old. And because of that, so they investigated him after he lost his license. Crazy stuff, right? But anyway, so that's something I want you to know. My question to you, you see that says no complaint, permission required. Does the boss needs to get a permission in order for him to sue you or to take you to court or to come after you? Does he need a permission? Does boss need the permission in general? If you're the boss, you're the boss. So basically, they don't need to have a permission. Nobody has to complain on you. They can just basically pick and choose out of the hat and say, okay, I want to investigate that person. And they can just do that, okay? So just know about the investigations. They can do it at any time, and they don't need a permission to come after you. They can do this at any time they want. Inspects and copies and records. So basically, they can come to your brokerage, and they do it quite often when they investigate the brokerages and they check all the records, make sure everything is properly done, because each brokerage have to keep the documents for how many years? 7 years. And also you, right? For all your documents, you have to keep them there too. May apply to the court for an order to seize the records. So if he wants to take them, he'll take them. Lobby the public, not the licensee. So he's not on your protection. He's not on your side. He's on public protection. Require the licensee to pay part or all of the expenses incurred in relation to investigation. So he can ask you to pay for that investigation that he's doing out of your personal pockets, right? Made by laws. So they also make the bylaws in regards to anything with licensing applications and business affairs. So they have their own bylaws that they make them, and they can change them too. So that's kind of, he's the boss. He can do whatever he wants. Hold disciplinary hearings. So if he wants to discipline you, he can do that. As any type of boss, they can come and they discipline you. But he's a busy boss, so he doesn't want to do it himself. So he hires a discipline committee. So somebody who's on a committee of the discipline who will be basically talking to you, right? Now, this is a good one. If you want to appeal, are you allowed to appeal? Right? Somebody's suing you. Can you appeal? Yes, of course you can. And all of the appeals will go towards the Financial Services Tribunal. So for the exam, just know that none of us will go towards the Supreme Court of British Columbia. We don't go to Supreme Court. That's for regular people. For our profession, we all go to the Financial Services Tribunal. So an exam, it'll say, yeah, you can appeal and you can go to Supreme Court. You know it has to be a false statement. So you don't go there, you go to Financial Services Tribunal. That's where we go. So in red, this is something that you have to know. This is what they like to add on the exam a lot. And they will say, what is the BCFSA responsible for? And they'll say, oh, they're responsible for law reform. We'll talk about this one later, but just know this is the things that he's not responsible for. Okay, that's not his job to do that. So no law reform, no code of ethics, no realtor code, whatever that is to put in here. These things, it's not his job. And I'll teach you whose job that is, but it's not his job. He's already busy enough, as you see. Right? Busy boss. Okay. So we used to have the council, and then we had a superintendent of the real estate. At some time, the government came in power, and they put the superintendent to supervise our council. And that superintendent used to be very powerful and used to tell council what to do. So our old boss, he would tell the old boss what to do. So now, because we have a new boss, which is BCFSA, he says, look, I'm not going to get rid of the superintendent of the real estate because that's representative of the government. Okay, that's what that is. But I will involve him. I'll appoint him as the board of director. On the exam, when they talking about all this, they're gonna only use BCFSA as who's responsible to give a license, discipline committee, all that stuff. It's all gonna come through BCFSA on the exam. They will never talk about superintendent of the real estate, so they're not gonna mention his name, and they're not gonna say whose duty is to give the license, even though that's his duty. So he's actually responsible for licensing applications, gonna go through the superintendent of the real estate, right? And he's the one who will be doing the investigation and the discipline hearing in real life. But for the exam purposes, if they ask you who does all those things, just say it's a BCFSA, because they will combine those two things for you. But just know that, yes, he keeps this superintendent of the real estate, the government employee basically, right, on the board of directors, and they basically do a lot of things. They do a lot of things. Question 8, true or false? BCFSA can conduct an investigation only at the request of the superintendent of the real estate. True or false? Does the boss have to ask for permission from the superintendent to do investigation? No, definitely not. So false statements, God's boss, BCFSA, doesn't ask for permission. Okay? And he can do it before and after. So that's good. Question 9, true or false? The Real Estate Service Act, which is RESA, which is your GOTA Real Estate, empowers the superintendent of real estate to carry out the key functions with respect to real estate licensing. True or false? What do you think? It is true, right? Because superintendent is the one that has a little bit of powers over things, and he's the one who's doing things for the BCFSA, right? So that's how you have to think about it. Okay, so now we're going to continue. So your God of real estate, which is RESA, the Real Estate Service Act, he created for you those organizations on top of things, right? So he chose the bows, but then he created some things. He established them. So on the exam, they will ask you, who established the Real Estate Foundation? Was that BCFSA? Is that a superintendent of the real estate? Who established the Real Estate Foundation? If they talk about the establishment, think of it as God. God established this and that and this and this, right? So that's kind of the God's job, to establish things. So he established for you the foundation. So what is this foundation does? The foundation, the key word that you have to know, they're responsible for the real estate law reform. Remember when we talked about the BCFSA? And it says that he's not responsible for the law reform. Anything to do with education. okay, or changing the laws or whatever that is. So that's the foundation's responsibility. So that's what they're doing there, right? So that's where they created your exams, right? Because they have nothing else to do. But anyway, so that's what they're responsible for. So on the exam, if they ask you who is responsible for the law reform, then you say it's a foundation. If I say who established that foundation, you say it's your act, right? It's the RESA. Good. So purpose of this real estate foundation, right? Real estate public and professional education, okay, education, real estate law reform, must know, and the real estate research, right? So now you have to know who pays them. So we know that we pay for the BCFSA with our annual fees, right? So when we pay our license fee, that's the portion will go towards the BCFSA. But who pays those guys? Who pays for them to be alive? It's interesting, but in every single brokerage, in every single office, you will have a trust account. And when somebody puts the money in those trust accounts, those money that's sitting there, the interest will accumulate on top of it. Do you know how many brokerages we have? There's so many of them. And every single brokerage, they have that interest that accumulates on top of those money. And what do you do with that interest? They have to give it back to the foundation. So foundation feeds up from those money from the brokerage trust accounts, basically, from the interest, right? That's what they do. Smart. Question 10. Which of the following is not a power or duty of the British Columbia Financial Services Authority, BCFSA? Okay, which one is not their power? Look at option 1, insurance of real estate service licensees. Okay, option 2, conduct formal discipline processes. Okay, that's definitely true. Require the licensee to pay part or all of the expenses incurred in relation to the investigation to which an order relates. Oh, they definitely can make you pay. I had undertaken and carry out the real estate law reform. Which one is definitely off. Definitely the law reform, right? So if they ask you which one it's not their job, make sure that you know the law reform belongs to who again? It belongs to the foundation. It's not the BCFSA who is responsible for that. Good job. Proud of you. Okay, next one. The next one we have the real estate errors and omission insurance. Now, who established that? Is that the BCFSA that established that? Is the act, is the God, right? So the RESA established for you the real estate errors and omission insurance. Now, what is this? That is a good thing, actually. It's a great indemnity plan that we have. This is your plan that will insure you for anything to do with the negligence. So if you make a mistake and if you said something to your client and now that client is not happy and now he wants to come after you, yes, he'll come after you, he'll come after your brokerage, right? And then basically they will look at it and says, was that a negligently done? What's negligence? That's something you do without thinking. You just said it without thinking, but you're not planning to hurt anyone. And that's called negligence, you know? Oops, sorry, mistake. You know, you said something, right? And you haven't checked on that information. But if you were fraudulently trying to hurt somebody and you knew that information is false, but you still said it and you just wanted to sell it so you can make your commission, now that's fraudulent. And fraudulent will not be protected by the errors and omission insurance, right? So you will not be protected by the indemnity plan if it's fraud, okay? So indemnity plan, sometimes they'll ask you for that definition, right? It's an insurance coverage, an exclusion for the real estate licensee in British Columbia, protects against negligently performing or failing to perform real estate duties, levies different assessments on the licensees, right? And the indemnity plan will cover the licensee up to $1 million for what? For negligence. So they will cover you up to $1 million for the negligence, but not for any fines. So if somebody wants to fine you, or if they want to penalize you based on BCFSA, then guess what? The errors and omission insurance is not going to help you out. It says that's your problem. Don't come to us. We don't pay for fines. We don't pay for your penalties. But if somebody wants to sue for the negligence, then we'll protect you. What else they're not protecting you for? They're not protecting you for any fines, penalties, right? That makes sense. Dishonesty, fraud, any criminal activities, dispute concerning the commission of fees. So if if you got underpaid or if nobody paid you, let's say you help for sale by owner and he never paid you, you can't come and ask for the errors and omission insurance to compensate you. They're not going to do that. So anything with your commission stuff, it's your problem. If you planning to sell your own house, that's another thing that they will not be involved, because they say, look, if you're planning to sell it by yourself or sell it by owner, then guess what? We're not going to protect you. Even if you're selling it with your license, but you're selling it by yourself, then you're still not going to be protected. So what people do in the offices, they say, hey, I need to sell my property. Can you list it for me? Don't charge me a commission though, but you can advertise it. You can get clients from this. Let's do each other a favor. And then next time you need to sell your house, I'll sell it for you for no fee. Right? So something like this we do at the offices a lot of times if you want to have the insurance. Right? The other way, if you know that you're not going to lie to people and you know you're going to do a good job, then you don't really need to rely on the errors and omission insurance. Right? As long as you disclose to your clients, says, that is my property, I am licensed, and I'm selling my own property, and I'm going to make that much commission from this. So you have to give a lot of disclosure. But I'll teach you that later. Okay, next one, claims for discrimination. Okay, of course, they're not going to cover you up, or if you punch somebody, right? Bodily injury. So if you sick, disease, or anything like this, or if you punch somebody, guess what? They're not going to protect you. Just the negligence. When you said something without thinking. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Question 11. The Real Estate Errors and Omission Insurance Corporation document that sets out the insurance coverage and exclusions for the real estate licensing in British Columbia, known as what? So the errors and omission, we call it the indemnity plan. Good. Question 12. The key purposes of the indemnity plan are to provide an affordable method of protecting licensees from the financial loss due to errors and omissions, and reduce the risk that a consumer suffering a loss as the result of the licensee's errors and omissions will receive no compensation due to the licensee's lack of funds. Ooh, that's a lot of information in one statement in here, right? So kind of break it into parts and see what they want from you. So the key purpose of the indemnity plan is to provide an affordable method to protect the licensees from the financial loss. Now that sounds good. I can handle that much information, right? Due to, right, errors and omissions. So that means some negligence happened, and reduce the risks that a consumer suffering a loss as the result of the licensee's errors and omissions. So usually people don't come after you and want to sue you if they haven't suffered any loss. So if you said to client, yeah, you can take that wall off and you can just open up this space. You said it without thinking. You didn't think that client will listen to you, and then he bought the place and then he took the wall off and the whole building collapsed. Whew. Guess what? Is he not happy? He's not happy. Can he come after you? Yes. See, he suffered some losses, so now, that was a negligently representation on your behalf. So for that reason, errors and omission will protect you, and that becomes a true statement. Yep. Question 13. The indemnity plan will cover disciplinary fines imposed by the BCFSA up to a limit of $1 million. Who thinks that is a true statement? Is that true? Yes or no? And if you said true, you just lost the mark. What is the problem here? Don't just focus on $1 million, because that's good. But there's one key word that makes it false. Which one? Cover disciplinary fines. Do they cover fines? Yes or no? They only cover the negligence, not the fines. Okay? Indemnity plan will cover the licensee up to $1 million for the negligence, but not for any fines or penalties imposed by the BCFSA. Right? So for that reason, it becomes false statement. You see, it's all about the keywords. It's about you paying attention. Okay, so the last one, real estate compensation fund. So compensation fund was created to compensate consumers, right? Clients. So if your clients lost money and it's because of your actions as a real estate agent, then he can go and complain to who? He'll complain to the BCFSA, to your boss, and that boss will send them to the fund, compensation fund, and they will compensate your client for the losses. In real life, nobody even knows about this fund, right? On the exam, if they ask you what happens if if they find out that it's you're the cause of the problem, they'll come after you basically, right? So it's not like they want to just give money to everybody. So real estate compensation fund provides compensation in relation to the real estate transaction for the funds that were misappropriated or mishandled. So if there's some deposit is missing or whatever that is, then that fund's supposed to compensate them. Okay, so now we're finished with everything in regards to your mandatory organization. So you learned about your boss. You know what the boss is responsible for. You learn about the foundations, errors and omission insurance, and then the foundation, right? So you learn all this. This is a mandatory organization. They have to be there. Without them, you cannot have your license, right? That's just kind of comes as part of the job. But then we have different organizations, and those organizations, it's basically up to you to choose if you want to be part of them. And most of us are part of them, and there is a reason for that. So first you have to know about CREA. Now, CREA is a Canadian Real Estate Association for your real estate needs. So CREA covers the whole Canada. So think of it as the biggest organization, okay? And it's a national organization comprised of the licensees and the real estate boards across the country, as well as all of the provincial real estate associations. So basically, CREA is a Canadian organization, and they are the creators or developers of the Code of Ethics. And the Code of Ethics is something they will test you in the exam. We have a separate chapter just for that too. It's a pretty small chapter, there's not many questions, but you just have to know who is responsible and who will enforce that on you. So if I ask you, this CREA, can they enforce the Code of Ethics on you? And the answer is no. Because they created it, it's just out there. That organization is kind of a floating organization, you know what I mean? It's not here, it's not in British Columbia. So they created the code. And what is the code anyways? What's the Code of Ethics? You've seen that, right? Do unto others as you would have others to do unto you, right? So do good things to people if you want them to do good things to you. That's it, right? Be good to people. That's the Code of Ethics, right? So they established this, but they don't enforce it. So just remember, the Canadian Real Estate Association cannot enforce it on you because they're not here to enforce it on you. Okay, so what they've done, they also created for you guys your British Columbia, and that's why it's BC REA, right? BC REA. I call it BC REA. It's like diarrhea. Just easy to remember. So that is a British Columbia Real Estate Association. So that's our association, and that's voluntary. So basically, you have a choice if you want to be part of it or not. Now, this BCRA, what does BCRA do, right? So they're responsible for government consultation. So they will let the government know what's happening in real estate in British Columbia. Communication network, economics forecasts, all those numbers and things that basically everybody needs to know, they will do all that. They're responsible for the standard forms. Now, this is a huge one because in our business, our forms we all use the same forms, right? They are standard, they are prescribed, right? And that's the BCRA is the one that created them for you, right? So ongoing education is always a true statement for the exam. So if they ask you who wants you to be educated, the answer is always the same. Everybody, right? Ongoing education, so they do those PDP courses. So after you pass the exam, before you want to renew the license, you have to take some courses. No exam, but you just have to take them, right? Pay money for that, right? So that's what they're gonna do. On the exam, they will ask you, who is advancing an interest of the real estate licensees as a profession? Is that the BCFSA? You see, he doesn't care about your how do you call it, to advance you as a profession, right? He doesn't promote you. That's not the boss's job. Boss is just to hire you, to fire you, to give you a slap on the face. That's what the boss is for. But your BCRA, so they are responsible to promote you basically. So how do they promote you? They're basically going to put your name on the board, says yes, he's licensed, right, at this office or whatever that is. But they're responsible for that. Now they're also responsible for the education, so they create for the Real Estate Institute of British Columbia. Now that's something that, to be honest, if you could go on their website, I've never seen anybody taking their courses. It's not like it's not mandatory, right? It's definitely not. But you know how some people like to have an extra abbreviations and different designations on their business cards, on their websites. So you can get those extra designations from them. And what they do, they give you an advanced education. As I said, I've never seen anybody taking those courses, but you're welcome to. And this designation that they give is called the RI. They're not going to test you on that on the exam. This RI is just the Real Estate Institute designation. That's what it is. Don't look for this. Don't worry about this. Just know it's not a BC REA job to give those extra designation, right? It's that institute that they can send you to. So yeah, if you want to take more education, if you want to have more credentials, you can go there, right? That's it. So and that institute will give you that RI things that you can add to your business card. Don't worry about this. Just not BCRA who is responsible for that. Okay, so next one. The most important part that the BCRA created for you is your boards. We have the real estate board. So yes, it is a volunteer organization. So that means after you pass the exam, you have your boss now, which is BCFSA, okay? He says you have to choose your brokerage. So you have your brokerage now. And then he says, so how do I list my houses? Or how do I do the searches? How do I, how do I get out there? And they say, oh, so you want to join one of the real estate boards. And usually those boards, you can choose it based on where you live. So I'll just show you, right? We have 10 different boards at this point. They might make them even less. It used to be 12 before. But we have Northern Board, Chilliwack, Fraser Valley, Kamloops, Kootenay, Powell River. Like there's so many different ones, right? Vancouver Island, Victoria ones. So we have so many different boards in here. So it depends where your brokerage is. So if your brokerage, let's say in Vancouver, you're going to be Greater Vancouver board. If you're in Surrey, you're going to be Fraser Valley board, right? So it all depends where you are. That's going to be your board. So what is a board? We call them our mothers because they kind of care for us and they will give you the better education than anybody else, to be honest, right? So they will give you something that is very crucial, and that is your MLS access. So they will give you that. We call it the candy. They say, you've been good, we'll give you that MLS access. Now, this is where you can look for it's a multiple listing service, MLS. So this is where you can search your listings, you can do the CMA comparable market analysis for your clients. You can do so many different things. Anything to do with real estate, this is what you need, okay? So they give you the candy. So my question is, what if you've done some wrongful actions and they're not happy with you? So what if your mother, your board, is not happy with what you do or what you did? Can she take your license away from you? Yes or no? Can your real estate board take your license away? She's your mother. Mother has nothing to do with your job, so she cannot take a license away. But can she kick you out of the board? Can she kick you out of the house? Of course, any mother can kick their kid out of the house. So she can do this, but she can also take away your candy. So she can take away the MLS, right? So that's the only penalty that she can do for you. But let's say if you're not happy with this mother, guess what? You still have 9 to choose from. You have a lot of mothers and they all don't like each other, so it doesn't really matter, right? So they're all independent mothers. So it's not a big deal if you lose a board, okay? You can come back and get a new one. Okay, so enforces the code of ethics. So you remember what I told you before? Let me go back. That the Canadian Real Estate Association, the CREA, is the one that developed the code of ethics, but not the one who enforces the code of ethics. On exam, they will ask who is responsible to enforce the code of ethics. Just know it's your real estate board. It's crucial. It's very important for you to know that. So they're the one who's going to be enforce the code of ethics. Think of it as this way. Your mother, she's the only one who cares about your ethics. Say please and thank you. Say hi. Right? So all that stuff, that comes with your board. So she's the one who is responsible for the code of ethics. Okay? But she cannot take your license away from you. It's not her job. Okay, so the real estate boards manage listings of the real estate through the multiple listing service. So that's your MLS system. Okay? Use the realtor trademark. So when you become part of the board, part of the real estate board, you'll pay an extra fee every month. It depends where your board is, right? So you pay around $100 a month for that. But yes, you can use the realtor trademark now. So otherwise, you're going to be calling yourself real estate agent, but now you can use realtor, and enforces the real estate code of ethics created by CREA, right? So hopefully that makes sense for you. So I like visuals. So for me, I always think of, how to remember so many different names, right? So hopefully you like my style of teaching. Okay, so question 14, the realty code of ethics is enforced by who? This is your questions. How much did you understand me? Okay, CREA, which is the Canadian, it's the biggest organization. It's not here, so it's not going to enforce it on you. Okay, it created it though. Local real estate boards, the British Columbia Real Estate Association, right, BCFSA, and the British Columbia Financial Services Authority, which is your boss, BCFSA. Who enforces the code of ethics? Make sure that you know it's never your boss. The boss has nothing to do with this. Canadian, it's too far. It's not here. British Columbia Association, it's the boards who enforces. It's your mothers who enforces the code of ethics. Question 15, which of the following is not one of the powers and duties of the British Columbia Financial Services Authorities, BCFSA, your boss? Which one is not one of the powers of it? Conduct the investigation. Can the boss investigate you? Yes, he can. Issue and renew the license? Yes, he can. Ensure compliance with the requirements of the Real Estate Service Act? Of course, because he's the one who enforces the act on you, so he has to make sure that you listen. And to enforce the code of ethics. Code of ethics has nothing to do with BCFSA, right? It has only to do with your boards, which is your mothers. Hopefully I brainwashed you enough on that. Okay, so who's responsible for establishing the fund? Who does all the establishments? Here's the tree, here's the Adam, here's the Eve. So it's always your, I call it the God of real estate, right? That's your RISA, the act, right? The God, RISA. Good. Next one. Who is responsible for supervising the educational qualification of the licensees? Okay, I know they're all responsible for the education, but somebody who is responsible for the supervising, it's your boss, right? BCFSA. So he's responsible. If you look at your notes, supervises and advances the educational qualifications and the program. So he's the one who is responsible for that specifically. Okay, who is responsible for undertaking public education and real estate law reform? Who is responsible for the law reform? Hopefully you said is a foundation. Good. This is good. Do you see what I mean? Like, questions going to be pretty good, safe questions because you know the information. Who is responsible for the advancing the interests of the real estate licensees? Advancing your interests, promoting you as a profession. Definitely not your boss, okay? It's the British Columbia Real Estate Association, BCREA, right? So they are responsible for that. Remember that one? That's their job. Okay, let's talk about the real estate teams. So this is kind of like a new trend. A lot of people like to be part of the team now. It is easier to do the business. It's easy to learn from the team because they already have a system, they have a structure to follow, and people like structure. People like to know what to do, especially in the beginning. And especially if you're planning to be mobile and don't be in the office too much with all this craziness, what's happening in the world, then having a team or be part of the team, it's such a great tool for the brand new agents, in my opinion. So for the exam, they'll say, look, how many people do you have to have minimum to create a team? One is not a team, okay? At least 2 people to create a team, and those 2 people have to be out of the same brokerage. So for the exam, it's crucial for you to know. So if you are decided to partner with your friend and your friend is a completely different brokerage, somebody has to switch. You guys have to operate out of the same brokerage. That kind of has to be happened, right? You can only be a member of one team at a time. Same thing with the office. You can't just pick 2 offices. I like the fees better here, but I like the team better. No. Choose one office, choose one team, right? If you don't like somebody, then quit it and then move on to a new team or a new brokerage, right? But you cannot be all over the place. Team names and team members must be registered with BCFSA. So that means their name has to be registered. So if you're the one who creates the team, and if you hire somebody to be part of your team, then that person's name has to show up on BCFSA, say he's part of my team. They have to be aware who is where, the control in it. It is the obligation to advise BCFSA in writing when any team members, when they come to you or when they leave your team, right? So you have to let them know. Basically, BCFSA, they count up or they know who is working for who, right? Because if anybody has to be sued at some point or anything, they'll know who they gonna go after, right? So for that reason, one person cannot be in two different places. All advertising. So now that's interesting. So a lot of things happens with BCFSA. You have to tell them things. But when it comes to advertisement, so let's say you want to advertise yourself and your team, do you have to tell the BCFSA or get approval from BCFSA, from your boss? Can I advertise this? Do you have to send all your advertisements to BCFSA for the approval, basically? They'll shoot themselves. No, that's way too much. That's where your managing brokers are for, right? So that's at your office, your managing broker is the one that will be responsible for this. But you have to make sure that if you have somebody who is unlicensed, you also have to let the BCFSA know that that person is unlicensed, and you have to tell the names of those people too. Okay. Team is collectively the agent for the client. Now that's interesting. So let's say you have 10 people on your team, and one of you guys have a listing and the other one has a buyer for the same listing. And he says, so what do we do? We're out of the same team, and I know your listing and you know my buyer, so it's kind of a conflict of interest in here. Do you see what happens in here? So for the example, they say you can't represent the buyer and the seller in the same transaction when you're working as a team. So that means you have to give that buyer somebody outside of your team. It could be out of your office, it's okay, but as long as it's not on the same team. Okay, question 17. Which of the following are general guidelines BCFSA follows with respect to the teams and the team names? Okay, now because it's ABCD, we're going to use the method of elimination. Licensed team members can be licensed by different brokerages. Is that true or false? Now that's definitely false. So when you already know option A as false, then whatever has in it, you would cross it off. Okay, so now I have only option 3 and 4 left. And if I look at option 3 and 4, look what I'm looking at. Both have B, both have C. So basically, I don't have to read those ones because I know that has to be the answers. But the D option is the only one I have to look at. So let's look at option D. And unlicensed team members who appear in team advertisements do not have to be identified as unlicensed. So basically, if you have your advertisement and if you have somebody who's unlicensed, you don't have to say he is unlicensed. Or do you have to? You'd better. So if somebody who is unlicensed, and if you don't specify that he's unlicensed, what if somebody calls that person and then he starts talking to him? You remember what I told you about the unlicensed? They cannot talk, right? So for that reason, that is definitely a false statement. So if it's a false statement, right, it says do not have to be identified. They have to be. You have to tell people, public, that that's unlicensed person. So for that reason, option 3 is the only one that's left in here. Okay, do you see how the method of elimination works? It's beautiful. Okay, so B and C are the true statements. No team name will be approved that is identical to the existing approved team name. So basically, you will have to apply to the BCFSA for the team name approval. But if somebody already has that team name, they're not going to give you approval. So that means you'll have to come up with a totally different name to get approved. Licensed team members must advise BCFSA in writing when any team members leaves the team. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about REDMA. There's so many acts. So basically, we don't just have one God. We do have our Real Estate Service Act, right? RESA, with the A at the end, right? That's the act. That's what A stands for. So they are responsible for the protection of the public. And who are they controlling? Who is your God responsible for? RESA, Real Estate Service Act. For the protection of the public, but they controlling you guys, right? So they're responsible for your actions. And now we have another God, another act, right? We call it REDMA, and that is the Real Estate Development Act. So this is the act, this is the God who controls the developers. If they're planning to build something and sell it to the public, then somebody has to control them. And for whose protection is it for again? It's always for the public protection. All of the acts, all of the guts are trying to protect the public, not the developers, not you guys. Okay, so what is this act does? Regulates the marketing and development units in British Columbia. So anybody who's planning to develop brand new units, right, stratas or whatever, they have to be abide by this REDMA. Imposes disclosure requirements on the developers. So the developers have a lot of disclosures to do to the act, make sure that they're doing proper job. So what is considered to be as a development property? On the exam of the ask is, so what is considered to be as a development property? So it could be as subdivision lots, or it could be the co-ops, or it could be the bare land strata lots. It's just the land itself, basically. And they say, look, if you're planning to sell any of these ones, then that is a development property. Now, they also have the rule how many units you have to have in order for you to have the disclosure requirements provided to you. So if it's a subdivision lot, so if it's basically any units, right, development units, subdivided lot in the development property. So any units. So if you have, let's say, strata or townhouses, let's say you're selling townhouses right now, and if it's you building 5 or more of those townhouses, then that is a development property. And yes, a developer must give you a disclosure statement and provide you with all the information, right? If it's a co-op, if you're building 2 or more units, then you have to provide clients with the disclosure statements. If it's a bare land, so you're just selling the lots basically, if it's 5 or more of those lots, then you have to provide with those disclosure statements. So that's kind of the bottom rule in here. Development unit, sometimes they'll ask you for a definition. Subdivided lot into development property. That's it. It's a subdivided lot. And then develop those lots. So how do we protect the purchasers? Because the whole idea of this REDMA, of the Development Marketing Act, is to protect the purchasers, right? So they asking developers meet requirements and approvals of the property. So developers have to meet the requirements to assure that the purchasers receive the title after they buy the property from them. You can't just give them money and says, oh, so what do I get? Right? They have to provide you with the title to that land, to that property. And they have to file the disclosure statements in the form required by the superintendent of the real estate. So remember we talked about prescribed forms? They still have to use the same forms, and they have to give the disclosure statements. So disclosure statements, which is DS, discloses material interest about the property. Any of you guys ever bought something from the new developments? Have you ever walked to those new developments and they say, yeah, that unit's going to be built next year. It's going to be ready. This is the deposit and this is how much it's going to cost, blah, blah, blah. So they have to provide you with disclosure statements before you buy it, right? They have to give it to you. So required when sold individually. So if they sell those units by bulk, they sell you all 20 units, then they don't have to provide you with disclosure statements. But if they give separate units, they sell it to different people, then they have to provide you with those disclosure statements. Must be provided to the buyer before an offer, right? And must indicate that the right to rescind the purchase. So that means after developer, so let's say you put an offer, they give you that disclosure statement, and then the offer get accepted by the developer. So he said, sure, I'll sell it to you. From that moment, okay, you have the right to change your mind. And that only applies for brand new developments, right? So it's not the houses that somebody lived in, but new development. So they say you have the right to change your mind. You have the right to rescind the purchase, and you have 7 days. It's funny because if you go to those new developments, they will never mention that. They're not going to say, oh, sure, you can change your mind. But yes, even if you give them a deposit, they will be obligated to give that back to you, as long as you change your mind within the 7 days. Must be in the form prescribed by the superintendent. We already talked about this. Must be prepared and filed with the superintendent of the real estate. So everything goes through that superintendent that works for the BCFSA. Okay? Developer must provide a copy of the disclosure statements to both superintendent and to the purchaser. Do you see how that form is so crucial, disclosure statements? Disclosure is basically everything about the property, all the bylaws, restrictions, what comes with the land, what type of interest in the land they have, right? That's called the disclosure statements. So they have to give that disclosure statement to superintendent and plus to the, of course, to the purchaser, right? And the developer must have a receipt of the disclosure statement signed by the buyer with a sufficient time to review, right? So basically they have to give you a document. First of all, you're not allowed to accept, remember, money from anybody else except your brokerage. And that is the biggest problem that we have, because a lot of developers says, look, bring me the buyer and I'll just pay you directly. And if they try to do this, you can lose your license, right? So everything happens for a reason. So you say, look, you want to pay me? Sure, here's my brokerage information. Send them my remuneration to my office and then they will pay me. Right? That's how it's supposed to work. And failing to recommend the legal advice to the purchaser. So if you don't tell them, seek some legal advice, get a second opinion, then you might be responsible for things like that. Okay. Question 18. Where the seller sells a unit of subdivided land in British Columbia and the subdivision is a development property. Okay, let's see what they want. The Real Estate Development Marketing Act has no jurisdiction. No, it does. Right? Because that's a development property. The unit of subdivided land is called a subdivision unit. So let's go one by one. So it has the jurisdiction. So REDMA applies to marketing and development units. Okay. Option 2, the unit is subdivided land is called a subdivision unit. What's the name of the unit? It's not a subdivision. It's development unit. Right? So for that reason, that's false. Option 3, the buyer has the right to rescind the purchase agreement at any time by providing appropriate notice to this if the seller has not provided the disclosure statements to the buyer. What do you think? Is that true or false? Okay, and none of the above. What do you think about 3? That is true if the seller haven't gave you any what? Disclosure statements. If they haven't gave it to you, then guess what? You don't have to worry about it because now you can walk away anytime you want. But if he gave you disclosure statements, then you have how many days? Then you have 7 days to change your mind. Good. Tricky, right? Okay, last part, I promise, no more. The trust accounts. So in every single brokerage, we talked about this before, they have to have a trust account. This is where, let's say you're working with the buyer gives you a deposit. What do you do with that deposit? Vacation time? So you take the deposit to that trust account, you deposit that and it sits in there, and while those money sit in there, the interest accumulates and the foundation gets those money. Remember how the drill goes? But the point is, so on exams sometimes they'll ask you for a definition. They can ask you, so what is a trust account? I mean, we all understand what that is, right? It's just, where they put all the money in. But it says where money is deposited by one for the benefit of another. So I'm taking the money for the benefit of you, right? In which the money is devoted to a particular purpose and should not be diverted for any other purposes. So what they're trying to say that whoever puts the money in that trust account, if it's for the benefit of the buyer is the only one, you can use those money only for his transaction. You cannot just take in those money and says, the brokerage is short on money this month, we need to pay rent here. You can't just pull up the money for the rent, right? So that's what they're trying to say here. So you cannot divert it for any other purposes. So the brokerage must have at least one bank account in a bank, right? Not one for each client. Can you imagine how many accounts we will have to have if it's for every single client? Not good. But if the brokerage has, you remember what I told you about managing brokers? So if he has a real estate license, he can hire real estate agents. If he has rental property management people and the Strata, then he can hire those people too. And that's how many bank accounts they also have to have, trust accounts. Not bank accounts, trust accounts, right? So the one for the real estate, one for the property management, Strata. So at least one bank account. Agent brokerage collects deposit as a stakeholder. So basically when you collect that deposit, so if I'm working with the buyer removed the subjects, he wants to buy a property now, he gives me a deposit. And what do I do with that deposit? I'll take it to the trust account at my brokerage, right? And I'll become a stakeholder. Stakeholder is somebody who's not taking anybody's sides. I'm just a mutual person. I just take the money, I put it there, and that's all I do, okay? Cannot take money for the brokerage business expense, which I just explained. You can't just take the money out of there for anything else, only for the particular purpose that what they're put there for in the first place. Okay, so how do you withdraw the money from the trust account? If you place this money by mistake, can you get them out? Yes, you can, right? Interest to be paid to the real estate foundation. We talked about that. Remuneration for the licensee if earned. That's interesting. So I don't know if you heard, but we always ask for 5% of 5 to 10% of the purchase price, right, towards deposit. Why do we do that? Because we want to make sure that that deposit that you're going to give us, and we'll put it in the trust account, it covers our commission. Just in case if the buyer decides not to complete for his personal reasons or whatever that is, after the subject is removed and he's under the contract to complete and he decides not to, that's not your problem. You're still going to get paid, and you're going to get paid, right, if it's earned from that trust account. So basically that's how they pay us, right? Accordance with the instruction of the principal. So if your principal, whoever you're working for, asks for that deposit back, if there's no conflicts anywhere, then those money could be released, right? But again, you cannot take that for anything else except what those money are placed there for. Okay. Last thing, I promise, no more. So the administrative penalty, that's something new that they added on the exams now, because they want you to know how much you will be responsible for if you non-comply with something, or if you create some problems, right? So basically say they come up with the new measurements for non-compliance, and they added to the progressive discipline system. So they added to the discipline already that's set up for you by the BCFSA. So this administrative penalty, guys, meant for the offenses that are less serious, then the offenses will be going towards the discipline hearing. So it's something for less serious, right? It's not as a big problem, but they're still gonna charge you money for that, right? Applies to professional misconduct or conduct unbecoming a licensee. They'll use those words quite often in use. So basically when you do any professional misconduct, so it could be anything, right? The client is not happy, something happened, mistake happens, and they come in after you. That's it, right? That could be it. So right now the administrative penalty is only $625, applies for the first contravention. Then if it happens again, they charge you $12.50 for the second one. Then they charge you $25 for the third one, up to $50,000 for each contravention, right? So basically up to $50,000 they can charge you, and for them that's a small administrative penalties, right? It does not apply to fraud. Fraud is a big problem. This is for less serious problems, right? If there's any fraud happens, then definitely something else will be charged you. Okay, so how do they do investigations, right? BCFSA, can they do investigation on you? Of course they can. They can do it before, they can do it after, they can do it at any time they wanted to, right? Remember that? Every time when somebody commits the professional misconduct or conduct unbecoming a licensee. So what happens then? So if they will come in after you and they want to do investigation on you, right? You have to respond promptly. On the exam, they will play with that. They will say, oh, it has to happen today, or you have to do it within 7 days. There's no specific time, but it has to happen as soon as possible. That's basically what that is, right? Licensee's response must be in writing, right? And within the time limit. So if they give you a time limit to respond, you have to do it within that time limit. Should you notify anybody else about this problem? Yes, you do. Remember, who's responsible for you is your managing broker. So you have to notify them too, right? Notify managing broker of your own misconduct. And just know that even if you know about somebody else's misconduct, you're supposed to, I don't like that, you're supposed to report that to your managing broker and then to BCFSA if he thinks it's big enough. So we'll talk about all this stuff in the ethics chapter, right? There's a lot more to come up on this subject, but just know that you're responsible for your own actions, and if you know somebody else did something bad, then you have to report those people too. So basically, just know that it has to be promptly. There's no specific time, as long as it's before the time limit that is set for you. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but I had to do a little search for you just to show you the example, right? So if you go to the BCFSA website, and if you go to all of the problems that they deal with, right, you can see the people that being disciplined. So I just pulled up one guy here just to show you. Ross Chan, and I just put it into Google search and look what comes up right away. Look how many article comes up with the penalty, right, and all the other things. It ruins real estate agents' reputation, that's for sure, right? Because it comes up on the first pages. It's pretty bad, right? So basically, BCFSA must to publish all the orders, right? All the orders, discipline orders, urgent orders, all the things, and to provide copies to any people requesting those copies. So basically, they post everything everywhere online, right? Orders must be posted on BCFSA website also, right? So they put all the links in there so everybody can see it, and it spreads really fast. It's pretty sad. So I know I'm finishing up on a bad note here to show you what they can do, what kind of penalty they can charge you. But what are they trying to do here? What are they trying to accomplish by teaching you all this stuff? They're trying to tell you to be more careful. That's it, right? So don't be scared. In real life, it's not that bad. I know a lot of students get freaked out a little bit after this chapter, after they do applied courses, they scare them even more. But in real life, it's not bad. Just don't treat people well. That's all you have to do. Anyway, so this chapter, I find it's a good chapter for the exam purposes. It has a lot of questions. So you can have up to 6 questions in the exam, up to 7. Like it's sometimes my students see so many of them. But they are such a good questions as long as you understand who does what. Okay? So do your quizzes. If you need to watch Melanie's video, do that too. We explain the information in 2 different styles. So sometimes it helps, right? But definitely do the quizzes, and I will see you in a next chapter.